The Archdiocese of Chicago is a vibrant and diverse faith community. We celebrate our faith through worship, evangelization, and reaching out to the needy. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Good morning and welcome to Mission Matters Live, a program focused on promoting a spirit of mission among the people of God in the Archdiocese of Chicago. My name is Megan Mio and I'm the director of the Global Mission Office. You are listening to WNDZ 750 AM. Our engineers this morning are Mike and Clint. Mission Matters airs on the second Wednesday of the month at 8 a.m. Central. This month we are meeting Father Paul Kalenzi, who is a Ugandan priest from the Jesuit Province of Eastern Africa and who's been living, studying, and working here in the city of Chicago for some time now. He's been working on a doctorate in business administration at DePaul University, and he has been working with the advancement team of the Midwest Jesuit Province as well. He's been living at St. Ignatius College Prep here in the near west side of Chicago, and will soon be returning to serve back in Kenya with the Jesuits in Eastern Africa. So we are blessed to have him here with us today to learn a little bit more about his experience in mission in Eastern Africa and here in the U.S. So good morning, Father Paul. Thank you for joining us.
Well, good morning, Megan, and thank you for having me. A very good morning to the listeners as well.
Yeah, well, we're very lucky, especially to have him here in studio with us. I've been saying this is my first guest in studio since we've gotten in this new space. So I hope that it will help bring a little more energy to our conversation.
Sure.
So anyway, it is a pleasure to have you here, and we'd like to learn a little bit more about your background. So I'd like to start by asking if you could tell us a little bit about where you're from, your childhood, and how you discerned this vocation to become a priest and a Jesuit priest.
So I'm from Uganda, like you mentioned. I was born at a strange time in Uganda. I was born in 1979, and some of the listeners might have heard about someone called Idi Amin. So Idi Amin was the president in Uganda at the time, and he was waging war in Tanzania. Yeah. So in the midst of all that, my family was forced to flee, and so we fled and went to Kenya, to Nairobi. And so I grew up in a slum called Kangemi in Nairobi. So we're refugees, we didn't have very much. And as a schoolboy in Nairobi, I got to live in a place that is not very pleasant, but I was very young, so I didn't really notice it. When I went back as an adult and saw the squalor, the poverty, I said to myself, well, this must have been a very hard place for my family to come to.
Yeah.
But I was very lucky because my father is an accountant, and so eventually I was able to find work and get out of the slum.
Wow. And
we were able to stay in a nice house. And as we were living in that house, I began to read a lot when I was 9 years old, and so I read everything I could get my hands on. And so the picture, for those of you who can see the picture, well, that's not really me, it's just a random picture, but it shows me as a schoolboy in Nairobi. And as I began to read a lot of books, one day I ran out of things to read in the home, and I picked a Bible. And so I began to read the Bible almost like a novel.
Yeah, right, from cover to cover.
From cover to cover. And so I read most of the books. I had to skip over the books that would bore a 9-year-old. So I skipped over most of the prophets, the Psalms, the Proverbs, but really enjoyed, all the early stories of the Bible, of the Kings, the Gospels. I skipped over, Paul's letters, but I read the shorter letters and the Book of Revelation. Yeah. So it was quite an experience because I began to feel a desire to do something for God, and I began to pray on my own. And so one of the pictures is of the cathedral in Nairobi. It's called the Holy Family Basilica, and so I used to leave school, grade school, at lunchtime and walk about 30 minutes to go to the basilica. And not from us. I just went there to sit in the darkness and pray. And so often I ask myself, what was I doing in that big church? And I still have no idea. But I'm sure God knew what it was about. And eventually I said to myself, well, maybe I should find something that can help me to pray. So I went to the cathedral bookshop and bought myself a prayer book. And I also saw some other very interesting books to buy with my pocket money. And so I bought these little books on the lives of the saints. And that's how my vocation to priesthood came about, that I began to desire to be a priest one day when I grew up. So I told my parents that. Eventually we moved back to Uganda, and so that's where I went to secondary school.
Okay.
I kept that idea to be a priest. I asked my father if I could go to the seminary, but he didn't think I was ready. So he said, well, maybe it's best to go to an ordinary Catholic school, which I did. And so when I was finishing high school, I asked him again, can I go to the seminary? And he said to me, well, what do you think about going abroad to study? And so I said, okay, I didn't think that you're going to afford it, but he said, well, I think I'll find a way. And so I went to the University of Manchester in England, and I read economics.
Far away, okay.
Yeah, very far away from home. And when I was finishing, I asked my father again, can I go to the seminary? And he says, well, what do you think about working for a bit, you know? And so I said, okay, there's no harm in that. I'm still a young man. And so I applied for work in the UK. I was lucky to get a job in London to train as an accountant. And then eventually I did qualify. And so I worked with a firm called KPMG. And I enjoyed the work, but I just knew this is not for me. And so even during that time, I began to ask myself, what will I do with my life? And so my spiritual director at the time said, okay, well, if you want to be a priest, do you want to be a diocesan priest or do you want to be a religious priest? And I said, I think I want to be a religious priest. He said, okay, well, why don't you go to a monastery and pray and see if God is calling you to that kind of life? And so I went to a Benedictine monastery. It's called Downside Abbey near Bath. And yeah, not to be confused with Downtown Abbey.
Right. This is England, but yeah.
Yeah, and so I spent about a week in the monastery, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the chanting, I enjoyed the work, I enjoyed the conversations with the monks, I enjoyed the lifestyle. But I said to myself, can I spend my whole life here? and I just realized no. I think it's nice to come here once a year, but I cannot be here my entire life.
You're not meant to be
I'm not meant to be contemplative. And so,
right.
And so, yeah, I went back to square one to think, okay, what kind of religious order can I join that is not contemplative? And so I remembered from my high school classes about the Jesuits and their history. And I said, well, maybe I'll give these guys a try. And so I wrote to them and I asked them, well, I'm thinking of a religious vocation, and I think I might want to be a Jesuit. And so they sent me material to read about the Jesuits. And I could see that they had a very strong spirituality, so I was drawn to that. I could tell that they were very much for social justice, so I was drawn to that, and they're into education. I didn't think I was ever going to be an educator, but I thought, well, at least the social justice, working with the poor, I'd like to do that. And so I applied to join the Jesuits, and they asked me, do you want to stay here in Britain or do you want to go back to East Africa? And after some discernment, I said to myself and to the Jesuits in Britain that I feel as though God is calling me to go back to Africa, where the needs are great, you know. And so I left my job. This was in 2006 that I left my job in London and went and joined the Jesuits in East Africa.
Now, what did your father say?
Yeah, he wasn't too happy. He wasn't too happy.
It seemed like he was trying to put you off.
Yeah,
let's just try this. Let's just try this.
Yeah, but
So
but there's a good ending to that story because I joined the Jesuits in Tanzania, and so I went for my novitiate as a novice for 2 years. And there's a picture there with me and my classmates. I think we were just going to play a soccer match. And after that, I went to Zimbabwe for philosophy. Yeah, so it's a long formation for the Jesuits.
A lot of education.
A lot of education.
And formation.
But so we joke that it's very long because we're very slow learners. So I had a wonderful time in Zimbabwe, even though it was a bit of a catastrophe, because when I joined the School of Philosophy in 2008 in Zimbabwe, there was a crisis, a political crisis and an economic crisis. And so there was hyperinflation. We used to carry around notes that were denominated in billions of dollars.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so I'd take the bus to go to town. It cost me $50 billion.
Oh my God.
And when I was coming back, the price had gone up to $100 billion in just a space of a few hours.
A few hours.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it was, so we had a very hard time finding food. I'm a very skinny guy. I usually weigh maybe 135 pounds, and I dropped down to I think 110 or 100 pounds.
Because of how expensive the food became.
No, there was just no food in the stores.
There was nothing.
Yeah, so we're eating a very basic diet of a cornmeal and beans.
Wow.
Or a cornmeal and a very small type of fish. Yeah, so many of us would have lost weight
Just
in that
enough.
time.
Oh my gosh.
But I did philosophy, and I really loved philosophy and engaging with that kind of thought. And so when I was done, I went to Nairobi, the city of my childhood, to work.
Yeah.
And so many Jesuits at that point would do school work, they'd be teachers. But my superior asked me to be a fundraiser and to raise money for the province. So I was the first development director, even though I was a young Jesuit. Yeah, so I did that for 2 years. I got to come here to the US for the first time to visit with my mentor, who was not an American Jesuit, but an American layman who was working with the Jesuits and who was the director of development for it was called the Wisconsin province at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had a very good experience, because I'm an introvert. I don't really enjoy going out and talking to people, but then I had to do that to raise money.
I guess so.
Yeah,
that's
so
true.
It was a good experience.
Okay, now, so this development work happened after you had completed your formation
My philosophy,
and had been,
not just,
or still you were
just
in that formation process?
Yeah, so the formation is so long partly because we have those 2 years in between philosophy and theology when we work.
Yeah.
So it's called Regency. It's almost like an extended internship.
Yeah.
It's a way to see does this guy really fit in? Does he enjoy doing the kind of work that Jesuits do? How does he live in community?
Yeah.
So it was good to have that kind of experience in Nairobi.
Sure.
When I was done, my provincial superior, sent me to Paris to study theology.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it was a whole different experience to go back to Europe.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed my time there. I spent 5 years learning theology.
Right.
So the first degree and then the master's degree in theology. Okay. And I lived right in the middle of Paris in my first 3 years, in a very close to Eiffel Tower. And so it was always very nice to walk around this beautiful city.
Sure.
And for the last 2 years, I went to a place called Saint-Denis, which is in the outskirts of Paris. So it's really actually a city of its own, and but it's a much poorer city. And so I was living in the projects in a sense. So very poor housing on the 13th floor of a tower. And so it was a very good experience as well to live amongst the poor, as they call them. Although by their standards, they are much wealthier than the poor in Africa.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Now, I have a lot more questions.
Sure.
We're just getting started with your journey, but it's time for our first break, if you can believe it. So we'll be back in just a moment to continue talking with Father Paul Kalenzi. Stay tuned.
Did you know that Catholic Charities accepts car donations? If you're ready to free up space in your garage and put a stop to all those expenses that go along with owning a car, we will gratefully accept your donation, whether the car is running or not. You choose a pickup time that is convenient for you, and we will make the donation as easy as possible free of charge. You'll receive a charitable donation receipt as well. We accept all types of vehicles nationwide, and you will know that your donation is made to Catholic Charities, an agency you can trust. To learn more about donating your car, call 877-786-4483. That's 877-786-4483. Thank you.
This is year 44 for me teaching. When I started here, there were teachers here that had taught me when I was a student. Now I'm the old person. Right now, I teach junior high math. I love when kids find what I'm teaching to be fun and they get it. I see that light bulb go off and it's a thrill. People are always amazed. What? You're here for 44 years? It's hard for me to believe, frankly. I love what I do. Every summer I think, oh, I miss the classroom. Even on the weekends, I think I can't wait to get back on Monday and teach those quadratic equations.
Shape the next generation of leaders. Teach. Apply today at archchicago.org/schooljobs.
Community is core to Catholic Charities' founding mission. For more than 100 years, we have met people and families where they are, serving anyone in need, regardless of their faith, gender, race, or ethnicity. As our world absorbs the economic, political, and social aftershocks of the pandemic, 50% or more of the 6 million people living in Cook and Lake counties have little or no savings. They are a paycheck away from zero. We are deeply grateful to everyone in the Catholic Charities community who partners with us to alleviate the suffering of the people we serve and offer them a better path forward. We are witnessing a message of mercy and hope to a world very much in need. Learn more at CatholicCharities.net.
Welcome back to Mission Matters Live. I am Megan Mio, Director of the Global Mission Office, and I'm here with Father Paul Kalenzi, Jesuit priest of the province of Eastern Africa. We've been learning more about his life experience growing up as a young child, a refugee in Kenya, and then growing up a little bit older in Uganda, where he was originally born. And we've also been talking about your formation process to become a Jesuit. And it sounded like you really moved around a lot during your formation as well. And, we were just saying, Jesuits are pretty well known, the Society of Jesus, especially here in the Chicago area, but it doesn't hurt to talk a little bit more about what does that mean? What do you think people should know about what it means to be a Jesuit, and a Jesuit missionary, or, a Jesuit involved in I think they're best known for education, but there's so much more, I'm sure, to the Jesuit life. So tell us what we should know, please.
So one of the more recent descriptions or self-descriptions of Jesuits is a bit weird. It's we say that a Jesuit is a sinner who knows that he's loved by God and has been called to serve Him and His people. So it's a different way to look at Jesuits, because we recognize that in our own past, we've done things that we are not very proud of. I'm thinking of the Jesuits in Georgetown, for instance, who sold their slaves, who enslaved people and then sold them.
Benefited financially.
Yeah, benefited from that. But our history is a very beautiful one. It begins with St. Ignatius of Loyola having this conversion experience and realizing that God is calling him to serve Him, and coming together with a group of other men who felt the same way, and forming this society that was named after Jesus. So it would be, they were called the companions of Jesus. And education was not really our initial postulate or work. The first Jesuits probably would have done anything that the Pope asked them to do. And so they went to the Council of Trent. They went to the missions. The most famous of them was Francis Xavier, who went to India and then Japan and died on his way to China.
He's one of the patron saints of the missions.
Exactly, yeah. And so the education bit came because Ignatius had to train his men. And so he had to found colleges to train them. But soon enough, people noticed, well, these colleges are so good, let's send our kids there. And before you know it, that became maybe the work that we're best known for, and that we do, in every part of the world.
Okay.
And so here in the US, there are 27 Jesuit universities. In Africa, we're only just trying to start the first Jesuit universities. But the other thing which I would say the Jesuits do very well is spirituality, and so we have those retreat centers. People go there and find so much meaning. They're able to find God. They're able to understand their lives and to see how God is active in their lives. Very many Jesuits also work in social justice, so either with Jesuit Refugee Service or with other organizations that work with the very poor. There's a famous one in Detroit, the Pope Francis Center for the Homeless, which is very creative in the way they approach issues of homelessness. So the Jesuits do a lot of things.
And are all around the world.
And all around the world, there's even a place like China. There's a very wonderful history of Jesuits going there. We go back a long way with Matteo Ricci. In Russia, when the Jesuits were suppressed, because at one point the kings and other politicians in Europe were upset with the Jesuits, so they suppressed us. But they survived, in all places in Russia. So Queen Catherine the Great said, okay, well, we need the Jesuits to come and teach. And so she was very happy to take us in.
Yeah, the Jesuits are resilient.
Very resilient.
We'll go wherever they're called to.
Exactly. And so we have that special vow of obedience that, we go where the Pope sends us. And so sometimes we've been seen almost as a kind of a vanguard of the Catholic Church. But yeah, it's true that we like to go to the margins, to the places where no one else wants to go or no one else can go. And so we call ourselves contemplatives in action. So even though I try to avoid being a contemplative, but I'm still a contemplative because I live out that life of contemplative prayer in daily life, in my work, in my contact with people, in teaching, in studying. All those are ways for me to pray and to be in touch with God. And we say that we do everything for the greater glory of God. So you often see AMDG in Jesuit places, so it stands for Ad Maiorem Dei Gloriam, for the greater glory of God. And so it's a good reminder that what we're doing is not to build up ourselves or to become famous or to get some kind of prestige. No, it's really, we're doing this to advance God's kingdom, to bring God to people, to console the world that the way that Jesus did, and to bring people to believe in God and to love Him and to trust in Him.
Finding God in all things and whatever it is that you're doing, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like there's a lot of overlap there with the kinds of conversations we talk about with mission, because mission can take all kinds of forms, So the mission of the church, but it needs different kinds of work, it needs different kinds of people and vocations. So you talked about you were avoiding the contemplatives, but you sort of found yourself back there. And last we were talking about your journey. You were in Paris studying. And that was just a short time, and then you returned to East Africa?
Yeah, so I spent 5 years in Paris.
Okay, well, 5 years.
And I was ordained in the penultimate year. So I went back to Kampala. I was ordained a priest. And I returned to Paris to finish my master's in theology. And my research topic at the time, actually, I think has become very important. It was reconciliation, but reconciliation from the experience of the genocide in Rwanda. Because Jesus is the reconciler. He comes to reconcile us with God and with one another. And so to read the stories of forgiveness in Rwanda, that was very powerful, and was able to to understand in a way how God forgives us as well, and how we're called to forgive one another, even though it's very difficult. And so when I completed my degree, I was sent to Zimbabwe, to the place where I'd done my philosophy. And it was very interesting because so I was asked to be the treasurer of the institution because I'm a CPA. So when I left my job, I thought, well, that is it. I'm going to join the Jesuits. I'll be a pastor, I'll be a priest. I don't need any of this CPA stuff. And so I burnt all my books. I threw away all the material I had for the CPA.
You're like, forget business.
Forget about
I'm
it.
in ministry now.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, every time that my superiors have had a chance to mission me, it's to do something with money, to be a fundraiser or to be a treasurer. Right. So my first mission as a priest was as a treasurer. Okay. But it's a good time to be in that school. It's called Arupe Jesuit. It was called Arupe Jesuit College. It became Arupe Jesuit University. And in the time that I was there, we transitioned from being a college, a small college of humanities, into a university. And so I was very happy to be a part of that process, to see it happen. And then, but after just 1 year, my superior said, okay, well, we'd like you to go for further studies. And so I was sent to the US. Initially, it was to do a PhD in accounting. But I realized, well, I probably won't do very well doing a PhD in accounting because it takes a very long time. And I was already, in my late 30s. So I did a master's degree, and I was hoping to do something different. But then my provincial then said, well, we'd like you to go to Chicago and to fundraise to start a university in Kenya. Okay. So I said, okay, well, yeah, I'd be very happy to do that. That sounds like a wonderful thing to do, to be able to fundraise for a university. Sure. And so when I arrived in Chicago, the provincial here, so his name is Brand Paulson, Father Brand Paulson, he said to me, well, Paul, how are you going to fundraise in Chicago? You don't know anyone, So he said to me, well,
where will you start?
Why don't you spend some time at St. Ignatius College Prep and learn how to fundraise with the people there. So with the president, Mr. John Chandler, who is a wonderful, wonderful mentor. And so I spent 2 wonderful years at St. Ignatius. I came in 2019, and so only a few months after I had arrived, COVID happened. And so I could not do any fundraising. But luckily I was also teaching economics, so I taught macroeconomics to the students. And so we're doing this online. And eventually when things opened up again, we could begin to do fundraising as we were before. So I taught theology and as well at St. Ignatius. The students there are very well behaved, I remarked, because I was afraid when I was told I was going to high school in America, because from all the movies you get the impression that it is impossible to teach American students. But
not at St. Ignatius.
Not at St. Ignatius. They're very smart kids, very well behaved. And so I left with a very good impression. And I had a very good experience, so I said to my superiors, you should send more Jesuits to work at American high schools and see how it is done, because it's a very rich curriculum. It's not just studies, but there's a very big focus on sports. There's a very big focus on other extracurricular activities and clubs. It was very good to see the parent-teacher interaction, to go to so many events, both fundraising and just social events, where I met people. So it was a very rich experience at St. Ignatius.
Wow. Wonderful. I think that was one of the ways that I first connected with you, because I was familiar with a neighboring parish there. I think you also had been.
So I was involved with some ministry at Holy Family Parish, which was merged with Notre Dame de Chicago. And so it's now called Our Lady of the Holy Family. And so that's where I was involved. I was doing ministry there. And had a wonderful time with the Catholics, with the parishioners there as well.
An immersion.
A very good immersion. Lovely to celebrate Mass with them and do weddings and baptisms.
Wow! Oh yeah, you got the full experience. Well, I mean, I often say when we've got visiting clergy and religious and lay leaders to say, Americans don't like to think about it this way, but you've been missionary to us. We like to think it's the other way around. But you truly have been, able to immerse yourself. It's a mission trip for you. To be here in Chicago, and we're blessed for it. Well, it's time for another break. Can't believe how fast the time goes. But we'll be back in just a moment to continue talking about For the Greater Glory of God.
Excellent.
Mission here in Chicago. Thanks.
I can't imagine myself going into any other school.
Our school fosters growth by being a backbone to our family.
My kids are incredibly well-rounded. I see a lot of kindness in them on a daily basis.
One of the things I think Catholic schools do well is personalize the learning experience. You can hear joy in the classrooms.
I feel that I'm happy that I am in this kind of school.
Our school communities provide students with academic excellence and character education in a supportive and stable learning environment. Come see for yourself. Visit archchicago.org/findaschool.
Catholic Charities' Loss program was created more than 40 years ago to help survivors of suicide wherever they are in the grieving process. This nationally recognized program continues to offer a safe, non-judgmental environment where survivors of suicide can find community, direction, and resources for healing after suffering the devastating loss of a loved one. Online and in-person services are available for individuals, couples, children, and families of all faith traditions. To learn more, call 312-655-7283 or email loss@catholiccharities.net. Don't suffer alone. We are here to offer loving outreach to survivors of suicide. Contact Catholic Charities today.
The cemetery ministry is a core ministry of our Catholic faith tied to the corporal works of mercy. It's comforting to know that our Catholic cemeteries are caring for the remains of our loved ones awaiting the resurrection. There are 44 Archdiocese of Chicago Catholic cemeteries willing to help you in your time of loss. Call 708-449-6100 or visit CatholicCemeteriesChicago.org. Catholic Cemeteries, serving the Catholic community since 1837.
You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Thanks for letting us be part of your morning. Now again, Catholic Chicago.
Welcome back to Mission Matters Live. I am Megan Mio, Director of the Global Mission Office in the Archdiocese of Chicago, and you're listening to WNDZ 750 AM. I'm here with Father Paul Kalenzi, a Jesuit priest of the province of Eastern Africa, who has been studying, ministering, and working here in Chicago with the Midwest Province of Jesuits. We were talking in the last segment a little bit about your experience living and ministering and walking alongside people here in Chicago at St. Ignatius College Prep in the nearby parishes and with the Midwest Province. And you mentioned that one of the goals besides study of you being here was to do this fundraising for the first Jesuit university in
East Africa.
And I also want to mention your fellow Jesuit, Father Patrick Mugisho.
Yeah.
He is from
Congo.
Yeah,
from the Democratic Republic.
And he's been doing his own fundraising for seminaries and projects and his own province in Africa, the Jesuit province. But I just want to mention him because he's also a friend of the office and is doing similar work in as much as that he has his own work to educate and raise awareness amongst the communities. But you have been doing this fundraising for the university, and it's going to be known as Hekima?
Yeah, very good. Hekima University.
Hekima?
So you can put the stress on Hekima or Hekima.
Oh.
So both work.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an Arabic word that means wisdom. Yeah, and so for the last 3 years, so when I left St. Ignatius, I then moved to Hekima, to the province office here in the Midwest to fundraise for Hekima University.
Okay.
And so there's a team of people that work with me, although their job is to fundraise for the Jesuits here in the Midwest, for the formation of Jesuits here in the Midwest, for the elderly Jesuits and their care. So my mission is somewhat different from what they are doing, but they support it. So if we have an event, they help me to put it together. They'll introduce me to people whom I can speak to about Hekima, and so it's been a very good experience for me to meet Chicagoans and other Americans, because the Midwest Province is big. I've gone to Wisconsin and to Ohio especially, to try and fundraise in those places too. And I received so much support from from so many American donors. And the hope is that we can start Hekima University within the next 5 years. It's a big project. It will be done in several phases. Right now, we're just trying to get the ground ready. So we received a donation of 75 acres of land in a place called Molo, which is 4 hours outside of Nairobi.
Okay.
And so in Molo, which is really mostly like countryside, there's a small town nearby, but it's really kind of country with farms. There's some schools nearby, like an agriculture institute, but we haven't really begun to build as yet. And so to be able to have a borehole, to do a fence, to have some utilities, so the basic things that can help us to start building. And then hopefully, if we have enough funding, we can put up the very first structures. So the academic building would be the first one, and I think we estimate it will cost about $6 million. We'd like to build a women's dormitory, so that would be the second building, the next step, because it's very important to be able to educate women, and often it's more difficult to accommodate them than it is to accommodate men. So men can find a place to stay nearby, but it would be great to start by having a place where women can stay. And the intention is to have a proportion of 60% women and 40% men. So to promote the education of women and in STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, because that's where there are very few women.
Right, fewer women in
and
that
so,
field.
So quite possibly the first programs we'll be running will be in data science, in computer science, and engineering, and then move on to my field, business, and science education. So it's a project of a very long period. Just last week we had a wonderful event here in Chicago. We brought together some benefactors and donors. I was saying goodbye to them and introducing them to my successor, but also it was a chance for us to give it one last push. And get people to donate to Hekima University.
You're going to embark on really getting it started when you return, I'm guessing.
That's the hope.
Right.
That's the hope.
That's the hope.
Yeah. So I'll carry on fundraising. I'll if I can teach, I'll teach. Because by then I should have my doctorate in business administration.
Right.
And so so much to look forward to.
This is very exciting. It's you said it's the first Jesuit university in East Africa.
So we have a few more. So I mentioned Arupe in Zimbabwe.
Okay.
But there's also Loyola University in Congo, so where Father Patrick Mugisha comes from.
Right.
And the other projects to build universities in Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, in Burkina Faso, in Madagascar.
Wow. Yeah. And I believe that there's Jesuit high school, secondary schools that are in that area too. So there is kind of there's a
the feeder schools
ongoing, a relationship that people know the Jesuit education is a good one. So that this university will be.
Yeah, in East Africa alone we have 7 high schools.
Right.
And so these are schools of a very good standard. And so it would be wonderful to offer these students a Jesuit education.
Continue.
In college and university. So it's something which is very much needed. Not many people know this or are prepared for it, but this century is actually the African century, because by 2050, half the population of the world will be African.
Wow!
Already, a third of all children in the world are African.
Ooh.
So there'll be a great need to educate all these children.
Right.
And to be able to foster the kinds of stable democracies that we need.
Right.
Because if you have a huge population that is uneducated, that is restive, then it won't turn out well for anyone in the world. And that's why it's really important to be able to offer a good education to our people. The great thing about educating Africans is that there's a huge multiplier effect. So my father who was an accountant and had the salary of an accountant.
Sure.
On that salary alone, he was able to educate not just his children, but his own siblings, his wife's siblings, his cousins, his nephews and nieces. So when I count how many people he educated, I would say about 60. Just one person. And so I think it's very important to be able to educate even just a few Africans, because that will have a huge impact on the continent.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's important to have leaders, local leaders, people who will, you know, in my mind, I mean, this is my feeble attempt at trying to explain that, like, young people who will come up with ideas we haven't even thought of yet, you know, of new approaches to economics or science and technology, et cetera, et cetera. And so, but if you don't educate young people in different places and in a rich variety of cultures like Africa, you know, then we may be missing out on those wonderful opportunities. So, wonderful. This is amazing. How exciting.
Well, the hope is that, you know, the next Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or Albert Einstein will come from Africa.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the likelihood is pretty high.
It's quite high.
And given the good education and the so many wonderful people, and it really, when you look at the church too, that's the reality.
Yes, the reality church, you know,
important.
yes, it's the part of the Catholic Church that is growing the fastest. Yeah. So just like, you know, demographically in terms of the whole world, even with the church, there's a huge explosion of Christianity, of Catholicism in Africa today.
Right.
Yeah. So many vocations to the priesthood, to religious life. If you go to a parish, any parish in Africa, you'll see how vibrant it is, how packed, you know, it is to the rafters. So
the life,
there's so much life. Yeah.
And we are affected by it. You know, we were saying on the break about the reality of so many priests and religious who have come and from other parts of the world, Africa, many different parts of Africa, here in the Archdiocese of Chicago, ministering with us, who are missionaries to us. And we are blessed for it. It's obviously, it helps grow our church. It is inspiring to all of us to share in this mission together. And it connects us. So it really is pushing this mission into new territories, that we work together on this. And making the world a little smaller place, you know, and the church a little bit smaller, because we have those connections.
Yeah, it's something which the parishioners at A Little Perpetual Help in Glenview remark, because, you know, I go there, you know, almost every Sunday, and it's nice to take the train, you know, the day before on Saturday, spend the night with the rectory and speak to the priests there, and, you know, spend some time with them. And yeah, I think the most common remark is that, what you said made me think, you know, because I talk about a different reality from the one that they're accustomed to. Yeah. And I think it's good for them for the parishioners to get to hear other stories, and be exposed to a different kind of Christianity, a different kind of Catholicism. Sure. And to realize that, you know, at the end of the day, we're just one in Christ.
Yeah. Yeah. Ultimately, we're just the same. We're all one. Wonderful. Okay, well, we have a lot more things to talk about in our last segment. We're going to talk a little bit about your studies and how you will be returning to Eastern Africa. So stay tuned, and we'll continue talking with Father Paul Kalenzi. Come right.
Community is core to Catholic Charity's founding mission. For more than 100 years, we have met people and families where they are, serving anyone in need, regardless of their faith, gender, race, or ethnicity. As our world absorbs the economic, political, and social aftershocks of the pandemic, 50% or more of the 6 million people living in Cook and Lake counties have little or no savings. They are a paycheck away from zero. We are deeply grateful to everyone in the Catholic Charities community who partners with us to alleviate the suffering of the people we serve and offer them a better path forward. We are witnessing a message of mercy and hope to a world very much in need. Learn more at CatholicCharities.net.
I can't imagine myself going into any other school.
Our school fosters growth by being a backbone to our family.
My kids are incredibly well-rounded. I see a lot of kindness in them on a daily basis.
One of the things I think Catholic schools do well is personalize the learning experience. You can hear joy in the classrooms.
I feel that I'm happy that I am in this kind of school.
Our school communities provide students with academic excellence and character education in a supportive and stable learning environment. Come see for yourself. Visit archchicago.org/findaschool.
Catholic Charities offers a wide variety of volunteer opportunities to those who want to share their time and help us serve people in need. Whether it's stocking the shelves of our food pantries, helping refugees learn the English language, tutoring school-aged children, becoming a mentor to young adults, sorting clothes in our clothing rooms, serving hot meals to those who are facing homelessness, or delivering meals and making cards to lift the spirits of our homebound seniors, we are deeply grateful to all those who want to join in our mission of mercy. Volunteer opportunities are updated weekly for people of all ages at ccofchicagovolunteer.com, or just call us at 312-655-7053. That's 312-655-7053. Thank you for helping us follow Jesus' call to serve our neighbors in need.
Welcome back to Mission Matters Live. I am Megan Mio, Director of the Global Mission Office, and I'm here with Father Paul Kalenzi, a Jesuit priest of the Eastern Africa Province, who has been studying ministering here in Chicago for some years now. And we've been talking a little bit about your vocational journey, your time starting in Uganda, and then traveling all over the place, because you truly are a missionary during your formation process. And then that business background just kept coming back. You think you're entering into ministry, but it just kept following you. And then that's some of what brought you here to the U.S. was continuing your studies and doing some fundraising and development work for this university to eventually be located in the first Jesuit university located in Kenya. So now we're coming kind of to the end here. We mentioned that you have been working on a doctorate in business administration at DePaul University here in Chicago. Wonderful to see that Vincentians and Jesuits are working together. It's always a good thing to hear. But we wanted to hear a little bit more about how that has gone. What did this degree entail? What have you been studying?
So it's a general degree. I didn't have to specialize in one area of business. And actually it was great because then I could go into management, into HR, human resources, into marketing.
Not just financial.
Not just finance and accounting. So because my specialization would have been accounting. But yeah, it's been good, and actually I've enjoyed those courses far more than I enjoy accounting and finance. So because they're more concerned with human beings, with people, and how they behave in the workplace. So organizational behavior, and so that's very, very kind of instructive to know. I think most of us work with a kind of a common sense approach to management. We think that we know how to manage people, but actually, well, maybe not. And so it's good to learn that. But for my dissertation, I focused on something which is not typically for accountants or finance people, but I think kind of maybe interesting for business in general. And it's a topic that I think sometimes is called corporate social responsibility, CSR. Other times it's called ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And so being an accountant, I look at how corporations disclose what they're doing for the environment, for society, in terms of the internal governance. And that's very important because, okay, here in the US it's voluntary, you can do it, but actually almost every big corporation now will say, okay, we'll release a sustainability report or a CSR report, and they'll say, yeah, you know, this is how much we're doing for the environment. This is how much we have in carbon emissions. This is our policy on human rights. This is our policy on sexual harassment. You know, so they do disclose what they're doing, and I think it's very interesting to see whether they actually do what they say. So I've been trying to study that, and so that's what my dissertation is on, whether the corporations in fact do as they say.
I would imagine, I mean, describing the kind of broader sense of business administration, that there's a lot of, maybe not spiritual elements to it, but there's a moral element, there's a
very ethical element,
social justice element, just as you're describing, you know, if we're caring for the earth or putting our money where our mouth is, or involving our employees in work that's supposed to better society in some way, even if it's a secular setting, you know, that there is something that, you know, a faith background might have to say to something like that. And certainly leadership as well, you know, a Christian leadership.
And actually during this time I've been involved as well with the Jesuit Committee on Investment Responsibility. So this it's a group of, they're part of a larger group that goes to corporations and says, okay, we'll buy your shares, and we'll come to your shareholders meetings, and we'll ask you what you're doing for the environment, what you're doing for society, and if necessary, we'll table, you know, an agenda for you to change, you know, what you're doing. So it's been very interesting to be a part of that too. But I started at DePaul, where I've been studying with, you know, with a wonderful cohort and with very good professors. It's been a very good experience.
How many years?
So just 3 years. Yeah, it's more of a practitioner's doctorate.
Wow. It's gonna happen soon. I know we were talking about it. Well, he's not quite done, but it's almost about there. So congratulations, early.
Thank you.
Well done. You've completed that hurdle. Well, now we just have a few minutes left in the interview, so I wanted to kind of just open it up and say, you know, we've talked about, you've come on quite a journey in your life, traveling to different places, and you are expecting a transition to come soon again, to return to Eastern Africa. And I believe you're looking forward to that, which is wonderful. I know you've enjoyed your time here, but, you know, yes, you're a missionary, true missionary, you never settled. And so I wondered if you could just kind of reflect on, you know, your experience of mission here and in different parts of the world. What would you like our listeners to hear and think about?
Well, first of all, that to be a priest is a wonderful grace, you know, the grace of being able to minister to God's people in this way. And so I often say to people that my favorite ministries are spiritual direction and the sacrament of reconciliation, so hearing confessions. Okay, that's one point. I think when I encounter people as they are, okay, and I'm able to to hear their stories more deeply and to pray with them in a more profound way. And I think also God can make me an instrument of His in a more concrete way, in a kind of setting. And so I always, you know, feel so much joy in being able to celebrate those two, you know, that sacrament of reconciliation and to offer spiritual direction to people. Now, because there are very few opportunities to do that as a fundraiser, I have to figure out, okay, well, how am I going to do it, even as I just interact with people? And so to be able to bring God. So when I meet and encounter someone, I'm not trying to get money out of them. You know, to donate to Hekima, which is a wonderful cause. It's also a chance to bring them closer to God, and to have an experience of Christ, of Jesus. And so it's not something I think everyone is kind of aware of, but something, you know, is very close to me. That I'm always on mission. I'm always on mission. I'm always bringing God to people. And it might be in the context of celebrating a mass, or it might be actually just meeting someone socially, and that's the one time they're going to have this encounter with God. So I've loved every minute of it. There were some difficult moments, especially during the summer of 2020, with the murder of George Floyd and what happened after that. But, there's a way to respond to that as well. And I felt that, in the context of St. Ignatius College Prayer, but also in my parish ministry, to be able to talk to people about racism, to help them realize that, it's something which is real, that many people actually suffer from it, that even I have encountered it in the church. And it will be wrong to imagine that, we are somehow exempt from prejudices.
Right.
All of us have some kind of prejudice. It has helped me to understand myself as well and my own prejudices towards different kinds of people, women, for instance, with sexism, towards people who identify as lesbian or gay or transgender. But these are all God's children, and I'm called to bring God to them as well. I cannot exclude them from the grace that God wants to give to give to all human beings.
True.
So to be able to come to that understanding has been a wonderful grace. It's been a time of joy. I live with so much gratitude to God and to the people that I met. There's really no way I can thank God and my friends enough for this experience. I think it's made me, a much better human being, a much better Christian, a much better priest.
Yeah, I mean, the word that came to my mind was encounter as you were speaking. When you're encountering someone, I mean, we're all different regardless, sure. But especially when you cross cultural boundaries and when you cross these other boundaries that you named around race or gender or, sexual identity or whatever, that we can learn something new. That's what an encounter is about. And that you as a priest have a unique position in being able to do that, because people will come to you with their spiritual questions, some of the deeper, difficult questions in our lives. And even if they wouldn't ask anybody else in their lives, they might speak to you because you're a priest. So you are lucky in that position to have those really deep encounters. But we as baptized Christians are all missionaries, and we're all called to those encounters every day of our lives too. So thank you for thank you for being a role model in that way and expressing this love of God's people. I think that is essential to the priesthood.
It is.
And to being missionary.
Yeah, it's what we're here for. We're here to channel God's love, to be instruments of His peace, like St. Francis of Assisi says. So to the extent that we can do that, and we've been able to do it, we give thanks to God.
Thanks be to God. Well, thank God for you, Father Paul. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a true blessing to learn about how God has been actively working in your life and in the communities where you've born and raised and all those places that you've traveled to and ministered to, including here in the Midwest. Thank you for building bridges and revealing God to us during your time here.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. It was wonderful.
Yeah, it's been very nice to chat with you.
Very good. Yeah, hopefully this is an opportunity to kind of think through all these experiences you've had as you're about to go through the next transition.
Definitely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you too.
Well, and we thank our listeners as well for listening, and we remind you, just as Father Paul said, always be on mission. Bye-bye.
Join us every Monday through Friday at this time for Catholic Chicago. You can stream our programs live or listen to past programs by visiting our website, archchicago.org, and clicking on Radio TV. And please connect with Catholic Chicago on social media.